Hello, and welcome to Academic Integrity and Generative AI at TMU, presented by the Academic Integrity Office. The Academic Integrity Office is a neutral support team and informational resource for students, staff, and faculty. We provide awareness and education about academic integrity, and we ensure that Policy 60, TMU's academic integrity policy, is fair and transparent. So what is academic integrity? According to the International Center for Academic Integrity, it is the commitment, even in the face of adversity, to six fundamental values: honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, respect, and courage. In practice, this means avoiding academic misconduct, which, according to TMU's Policy 60, is any behavior that undermines the university's ability to evaluate fairly students' academic achievements, or any behavior that a student knew or reasonably ought to have known could gain them or others unearned academic advantage or benefit. It's also important to know that not knowing the policy is not a good enough reason for not following the policy. As the policy states, all members of the university community have a responsibility to inform themselves about academic integrity and misconduct, including the contents of this policy. The full Policy 60 can be found on the TMU website. According to Policy 60, there are many different types of academic misconduct. Complete explanations are listed and described under Appendix A. I do, however, want to highlight the definitions for one type of misconduct as they were recently updated: misrepresentation of personal identity or performance. As you can see, in addition to what was already listed, there are two new definitions: submitting work created in whole or in part by artificial intelligence tools unless expressly permitted by the instructor, or submitting work that does not reasonably demonstrate your own knowledge, understanding, and performance. You are all expected to complete your work to the best of your ability. Your best is not necessarily going to be the best all the time, and that's okay. The purpose of doing these assignments is to demonstrate your understanding of the material you are being taught, not to make it look like you already know everything. Submitting work generated by AI can also backfire in several ways. First, many students seem to assume that AI can do their work better than they can, which is almost always untrue. AI might use fancier words, but you shouldn't be including words you aren't familiar with in your work anyway, whether they sound better or not. Even with fancier wording, the responses themselves are often simplistic, and the overall quality of the resulting work is therefore low. And that doesn't even touch on the larger problems with using generative AI. To complicate this, some instructors are allowing the use of generative AI in limited ways, and I know the temptation is there even when you're not allowed to use it. I also know that a lot of students get help from ChatGPT in ways that don't include having it write stuff for them, like for research or learning. But there are two big problems with using generative AI for any part of your academic work. Number one, it can get things wrong, and number two, it will make stuff up. I came across this article that talked about how ChatGPT can't count the number of R's in the word strawberry, and decided to try asking it myself. Not only did it get it wrong, saying there were two instead of three, even when I asked if it was sure and if it wanted to double check, but when I corrected it, it doubled down in a rather condescending way. I had to capitalize the R's in the word in order to get it to see that it was wrong. Now imagine if I'd asked it a question about course material. I know that a lot of students like to ask ChatGPT to summarize articles for them, but again, you can't assume that those summaries are accurate. Here, as you can see, I've asked it to summarize a scholarly article for me, and it says that it has. It first states that the article is about AI in academic settings, and in the summary provided, it says that the author talks about AI's potential to enhance learning, the challenges of plagiarism, and the importance of evolving assessment methods instead of punishments. Sounds great. But if you look at the actual article's abstract, you see that this is not about AI in academic settings. The article is published in a journal called Seminars in Nuclear Medicine, and the official summary talks about the significant limitations of ChatGPT's usefulness in nuclear medicine and radiology. The article notably has nothing to do with student assessment methods as ChatGPT summarized. So what went wrong? As you can see here, before providing its summary, ChatGPT searched two sites. It presumably ran a Bing search on the article name, and then it found an article from the University of Melbourne. It is that article that ChatGPT has actually summarized. But it didn't say, oh, I couldn't find a summary of the article you wanted. Here's one that sounds similar. Instead, it passed off a summary of the source it found as the one I was looking for. Maybe because it didn't realize that it found the wrong article, or maybe because it wanted to provide me with something. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Either way, it gave me incorrect information, and if I hadn't checked, I wouldn't have known. And it's really important to avoid this kind of situation because misrepresenting the contents or meaning of a source text is considered academic misconduct. So that's the first problem to look out for. The second, as I've already mentioned, is generative AI will make stuff up. This link, which you can find on the references list at the end of the video, takes us to a conversation that I had with ChatGPT. In it, I asked it to find me a source about academic integrity and popular media, and it gives me an example of a title in bold, Academic Integrity in the Age of Media, the Role of Popular Media in Shaping Ethical Behaviors. However, it hasn't listed an author or any other information, so I ask it for the author's name. It turns out it has misspoken. The article name that it has given me doesn't exist. It's very sorry for the error. So I ask it why it gave me the title if it wasn't a real source. It's very sorry for the confusion. The title was just an example of a source, but it assures me if you need real, credible sources on the topic, I can help you find actual publications. So I ask it to find an actual publication about academic integrity and popular media. And it responds, here are a few real publications. And it lists 3 journal articles. The journals do exist, but there are no volume or issue numbers, so the titles would be difficult to find. So I ask it, what is the volume and issue number for the third source listed? It's very sorry, but it seems that that article is not an actual publication. I ask it why it gave me another fake source when I asked for real ones. It apologizes and will be more careful in the future. It assures me that if you need help finding actual publications on academic integrity and popular media, I'm here to assist. So one more time, I say I would like you to list an actual publication on academic integrity and popular media. And it responds with, here is an actual publication, listing an article title with authors, a journal title, and volume and issue numbers. Great. I go to the journal, go to the volume and issue, but the article is not there. It doesn't exist. I inform ChatGPT that the article doesn't exist, and once again, it is very sorry. It finally suggests a book, right here, Cheating in College, Why Students Do It and What We Can Do About It. And I'm happy to say that after a quick Google search, the book does actually exist. However, it has nothing to do with academic integrity and popular media, which is the topic I asked ChatGPT to help me with. The only mention of media in the index of the book has to do with perspectives and scandals. So after all that, I still don't have any sources I can use for my research. What I want you to take away from this is that generative AI is a tool, and when your instructor permits it, it can be used as such, but it should not be considered a reliable source of information. So now that we've talked about what to look out for when using it, we can talk about how to use it when using it is permitted. One way that some instructors are allowing its use in class is to assist with brainstorming. So here are some tips for brainstorming with generative AI. First, as we've already gone over, make sure you're using it as a tool, not a source. Your conversation should be used to inspire your own thinking. It should not be thought of as ready-made content you can include in your work. Prompt it to prompt you. Ask ChatGPT to ask you guiding questions or to suggest ways that you can explore your topic and develop your own argument. Make sure you're using specific references to course material when interacting with ChatGPT so that the responses you get are relevant rather than general. Don't just accept what you're given. Ask yourself, do these responses use the terms you've been studying? Are they consistent with what you've been learning? Are they focused enough to help or too broad? And always, always make sure that the information is correct. Are the responses consistent with your course material? Do the sources exist? Fact check everything. Perhaps ironically, this section of our talk can be summed up with a quote from ChatGPT itself. My advice can be a helpful starting point, but students should always verify the information against authoritative sources. Encouraging students to see me as a supplementary tool rather than a definitive source of truth is a good way to ensure accuracy and uphold academic integrity. So when your instructor permits it, generative AI can be used as a tool. But it's also important to be aware of the many AI tools that may be over assisting you in completing your work. It's not just ChatGPT. Grammarly, for example, is often thought to be okay because it focuses mainly on spelling and grammar, or it used to. However, when it offers fixes, it does so by rewriting your work for you. So the work is no longer yours and yours alone. If you were to then go on to submit that work as yours alone, you could be engaging in academic misconduct. There are also other tools available, paraphrasing tools like Quillbot, auto translation tools, and many others that do much more than they should. You may want to use them to assist your education, but don't let them get in the way of it. Now let's go over a few tips for maintaining academic integrity with respect to generative AI. Follow instructions carefully. Sometimes it's helpful to read instructions out loud to yourself so that your eyes don't skip over anything important. Contact your instructor if you have a question, rather than assume that something is okay to do or use. Do not use AI without your professor's explicit and detailed permission. If they don't say you can use it and say how you can use it, it shouldn't be used at all, even for brainstorming. Read evaluation requirements early, even if you don't start the assignment early, as that will give you time to ask questions, prepare, and manage your time. Complete work individually unless otherwise stated. Avoid referring to, consulting, or using other students' work, for example, websites like Course Hero, and avoid sharing your own work, especially anything that another student may copy into their own work. And I know you're thinking my friends would never do that, but desperate people do desperate things, and it happens. So just don't provide the opportunity. Take care when giving feedback or proofreading. One of the definitions of plagiarism includes using someone else's substantive edits. It's okay to point out problems, but don't provide solutions. Remain attentive when doing group work. You are responsible for any assignment with your name on it in its entirety, not just the parts that you worked on yourself. It's a good idea to leave some time before the deadline for each person in the group to review everyone else's work before you have to submit. And I've heard students talk about how they don't want to rat out a group member, but that person didn't offer you the same care when they risked your grade and your academic record, and you don't owe anyone your silence. Remember that your work is your effort, labor, understanding, and expression. Your work shows what you've learned, how you can apply that information, and whether or not you can communicate it clearly. Your assignment may not be perfect, but it doesn't have to be, and it probably shouldn't be. If you already knew everything, you wouldn't need to be here. Earlier, I mentioned courage, and completing your work with academic integrity requires it. It may mean submitting work that isn't your absolute best. It may mean accepting late marks if you can't finish something in time, or asking your instructor for an extension before the deadline. And most importantly, it may mean asking for help when you need it. There are many academic resources available for you at TMU. For example, the AIO offers 2 types of virtual drop-in appointments that you can book to ask questions about our policy or to discuss the integrity of an assignment in progress. That's all from me for today, but please email us if you have any questions or book a virtual drop-in appointment. Thank you very much. Here are my sources.